Hey everybody, welcome to the ESL Hearthstone Legendary Series brought to you by Newegg.com. My name is Dan Frodancho, and today I am joined by George Hyped Maganzini to bring to you, over the course of 12 weeks, the ESL Legendary Series for 36,000 US dollars. We're going to have hundreds of players compete for 8 spots in the offline finals in February 2015. More details to come out soon. But in the meantime, we're going to have a lot of fun and a new format as well. George, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm really excited. We come off of BlizzCon a couple weeks ago, and it's cool to see a new world champion crown, but it's time to start picking up some Hearthstone action. What really makes me excited above everything is that this league is going to be trying out all kinds of different things, including a new format, which people haven't seen yet.
Yeah. So it's you bring 3 decks and you select the order without knowing your opponent's decks. So your 3 decks are going to run into his 3 decks, and you don't know the order at all, so it's just completely random.
Mhm.
So it's somewhat like ladder, where you don't know what you're facing, but at the same time it's a little different. So we're going to expect a lot of hunter, but maybe when I play ladder, I expect maybe like 40-50% hunter. But now you're only going to face hunter about 30% of the time. So that's like sort of a plus, and it makes decks like maybe handlock a little bit better.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what we're trying to do here at the ESL Legendary Series is try to, closely resemble ladder, because what happens is every single week you have an opportunity to play in this very tournament. That's right. Every Sunday, tomorrow, Hype could even go. I could even play in it, although I probably can't because I'm casting most of it as much as I can.
Yeah.
But every Sunday we're going to have an open Challenger Cup where the top players from those get an opportunity to play in Saturday's main event. So when you see these players, we have 4 people who are invited based off of well-known people and players, standing communities, or merit, as well as 2 open seats. And this week it's going to be Ping Ping Ho and as well as Supernova from America. We have 2 preseason winners, and that's going to go to Alchemixt and GCT Turth
Okay.
from India. And this will continue on for a couple of weeks until we hit weeks 5 through 8. This is where it starts getting a little complicated, but good. The people who win weeks 5 through 8 on the right side of your screen automatically qualify to the finals for the $20,000 land. And then in the meantime, people are earning points throughout the weeks, and the highest 4 players throughout the season points, as you can see in the middle of your screen, will be the ones who go all the way. Of course, winning increases your chances, but we only give give points rather, to the top 3 spots throughout the entire weeks. Weeks 9 through 12 are going to be more of fun events. They're going to be $500, and we experiment with really cool formats, which people haven't seen. But the best part is, somewhere in the middle of this tournament, we don't know when exactly just yet, we'll be seeing Goblins versus Gnomes drop on us.
Okay.
Hyped.
Cool.
So it's going to be a really exciting time because we don't know when exactly this new format will be we don't know what to expect, really. But we're willing to experiment, we're willing to try, and of course, everyone's really looking forward to the new expansion.
I'm definitely a fan of new formats. Totally. I like it a lot. New strategies, new decks.
All right, well, let's take a look at the bracket today. Who we can be seeing match up against each other, Hyped?
Looks like we're starting with GC Turth and Chalky, Alchemix and RDU, Ping Ping Ho and Hosty, and Supernova and Rayned.
That's right. So we have our first match of the day, Alchemixt versus RDU. That one's a really interesting one to me because Alchemixt, he's been invited to a few of the tournaments. Most recent memory comes WCA, where
Yes.
actually you saw him in China. And then RDU, a guy who's been building his name through a lot of tournaments and through merit. And today he comes in here as one of the 4 invites. I'm not sure how RDU is going to perform, though, because it feels like he's been slumping recently.
Yeah, to me, I see him as a hard worker that's been steadily improving, or actually improving pretty quickly. But he made a few misplays in his most recent performance, and I don't know if it's nerves or what it is, but hopefully, if he can eliminate those, he'll be very strong.
Do you think it has anything to do with the sheer volume of tournaments he's playing in? Because I know for a period of time you also were like having a lot of tournaments you have to prepare for, and it feels like it gets overwhelming at certain points.
It's definitely possible. At WCA, he was talking a lot about how he was doing these long practice sessions with Tice, his teammate at the time, and it could have been that they were playing, maybe missing some sleep. I definitely put a lot of value on. I put more value on sleep than practice, but I know some other players disagree and they practice a lot the night before, and they don't sleep.
That's right. Well, we don't know too much about Alchemix's practice regimen compared to RDU, but I do know Alchemix recently joined Complexity along with Dog Show, and I believe Noxious is on that squad as well. And people are saying Complexity is one of the best teams in at least North America for sure, joining along the likes of Temple Storm as well as a few other people. How do you feel Alchemix's current skill status is as we get ready for our first match?
I didn't see him for a while before WCA, but he came into WCA very prepared and showing that he worked a lot. And I've seen him play a lot. He's on my friend list on ladder. I see him very high ranked on ladder, so he's practicing hard and doing well.
Okay, well, I don't know what to expect from either of these guys, but I can generally get a feel of ladder, right? This is where people can make comparisons, and the first thing that pops in your mind is Hunter and Warlock.
Yes,
those are the two classes where you primarily see the most of. But it all comes down to that third deck rotation. Like, what are you going to include as another deck to potentially line up? Now, keep in mind, for anybody just tuning in, we're having the first three classes selected once, but blind chosen. You don't even get to know the classes of your opponent. So RDU and Alchemixt talk to the admins separately and saying, this is the lineup that I want to field first. And interestingly enough, neither of them lined up supposedly their better classes matchup against each other. Like Warrior wants to hit into the Hunter,
well, actually,
but instead it hits the Druid.
I'd actually say that RDU won this lineup war basically because the Druid really wants to beat Warrior. I'm sure the Druid might have like a big game Hunter so it could beat Handlock if that's what Alchemist is running, but it definitely does not want to hit Zoo and it doesn't want to hit Hunter either. It definitely wants to hit Warrior.
So we're giving the edge here to RDU based off of how the lineups have fanned out. All right. Well, even though this is the first three games, if there isn't a 3-0, which is a pretty strong likelihood that it might not be that way, then games 4 and 5 will be a complete blind pick where you're able to pick a deck or a class rather again, even if it's lost. And that's where the element of ladder comes in, because one game is not really representative of how a deck should perform.
Yeah.
In recent times, people even, and just to be a little candid, people put your Druid deck in recent memory, the one with Ancient Watchers, under fire because they're like, is that one that performs really well? And you haven't been able to win too much with it. But at the same time, if you get multiple chances, maybe you can show what it's got.
Yeah, one of the strengths of that Druid deck is that it can beat Hunter. And in tournaments where you're banning Hunter, it's not really as strong. But in this situation here, we see RDU's Druid. It's going to win this game against a Warrior most likely. But after the first three games, he's not going to be able to pick it. You don't want to pick that into possibly Hunter or Warlock, whereas Alchemist can pick his Warrior. Warrior's a strong ladder class. He can pick that into any of the classes.
All right. Well, everything seems to be ready. The fire is nice and warm. Let's go into game number 1 between RDU and Alchemist. It's Druid versus the Warrior. This one's going to be pretty tough, although Alchemist is a Warrior specialist. It's a deck that he says is one of his most comfortable, and you can tell because there's all golden cards.
Yeah.
He's played this deck a lot.
We're already seeing a Claw in RDU's deck, which it could just be a response to Undertaker, or it could suggest possibly a Gadget Zan in the deck.
Right. Now keep in mind that because you don't know your opponent's lineup, you have to play extremely cautious. You can't really get away with making decks super greedy sometimes because you might just run into an aggressive deck that catches you off guard.
We saw that Alchemist had a big game Hunter as Warrior deck, which might be useless if RDU brought Zoo instead of Handlock. It's going to be completely useless.
That's true. We'll find out, though, next game. In the meantime, as obviously we have the webcams a little bit flipped. I was looking at RDU, who is the player that's the Druid. He has a really good start with Ancient of Lore on turn 3, and he's going to have to hit with these next 2 draws, because even though he hit this Ancient of Lore, if it gets dealt with, he doesn't really have a couple plays.
Yeah, he got that Wild Growth that'll help get that Rag out really quick. And I guess the Big Game Hunter will have a target in the Rag.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, this is uncomfortable. Do you want to expend the coin to remove the Ancient of Lore?
I think usually when you have the Black Knight, you're going to get a target against a Warlock, so he's probably going to want to save the coin for that. And 3 damage isn't too much to take. Fire Warlocks it doesn't really kill anything on its own against Warrior anyways. So this is as good as it's going to get, basically.
True. I mean, a lot of the targets in Druid deck often have a pretty decent amount of health. That Fire Warlock often goes 1-for-1 with it.
If he's willing to use the coin here, he would have to Spellbreak or something next turn, which probably isn't going to happen. You're not going to Spellbreak a 4-drop from a Druid. I would just go ahead and Fiery. At the same time, he
Right.
could look for a 4-drop with the shield block. I don't know his deck. Maybe he has like Sengens or something that he'd like to find. Oh, see now.
So now he's got to commit to the shield.
It's fine. He can still armor up Fiery next turn. And then the Fiery in combination with the Belcher should be able to kill something.
Okay, well, fortunately for RDU, he managed to pick up a Wild Growth.
Yeah, still a little clunky, but it works out.
Yeah. And he does have a combo. Is it important at all to have early combo pieces against Warrior? Because I know it is one way for Druid to pressure him out of the game.
No, you just want to keep spamming creatures, and just top deck into the combo at some point. Even just Roar later in the game. It's fine.
Right. I mean, you want to value the curve a lot
Definitely.
more. I mean, just look, it's still a little bit mana inefficient for his turn at the moment. And Claw coming out is quite amusing because that was a card used in the very early stages of the beta, back when Savagery was a thing.
Yeah, Claw and Pyromancer used to be standard to deal with Zoo, something like that. And then, but now I think it's just to deal with Undertaker. Again, unless we see the gadget. So now,
now this is really interesting.
I think this is Life Coach inspired. I think he started. I saw him streaming it quite a bit.
Wow, this is really cool.
So the Claw gives you insurance against Undertaker, and if you draw it late with your gadget, it works out.
Yeah, so that way he doesn't lose some of his late game potential. Not to mention, it also squeezes in with the combo. So if you
Definitely.
have the 14 damage from Savage Roar, and I mean from the Force of Nature Savage Roar, they're not expecting that 15, 16 points of damage.
Yeah, everyone feels safe at 15 HP, but they're going to get juked back, I'm sure, at some point. And this deck does run 2 copies of the combo, I believe.
Wow, well this is pretty neat. The more, I always get surprised because I feel like innovation in Hearthstone has always been pushed to its limit, but even now we start seeing some cool things here and there mixed in. Here comes Ragnaros, but we know that there are tools for Alchemixt to deal with it, although it's a little bit tricky. Oh, excuse me, I thought he had 8 mana. I thought he could answer Rag with his own Rag, but he can't.
Oh, no. And RDU's hand is looking a little weak. You don't really want Swipe against Warrior. He has the combo, but he's still pretty short on damage if this Rag doesn't hit face again. He can't actually deal with it, like you said.
Yeah, I thought maybe he had 8 mana so he can use one of his 8 health creatures here, or 8 mana creatures to deal with it, but instead, it's pretty awkward.
So Silencer Black Knight. He's got to look at the deck. He's definitely not going to expect anything like an Ancient War. And even Druid of the Claw has been being cut a little bit recently.
Wow. So he's just going to completely avoid it and only used basically 2 mana this turn.
Yeah.
That's a really big tempo loss for the Warrior.
He really wants to hold on to that Spellbreaker and the Black Knight.
Wow, Gadget Stand into Swipe. This is funny. This is not the normal Druid that you're used to seeing, and the Gadget Stand is a pretty big threat because 4 out of the 5 cards are spells, and RD is putting on a significant amount of pressure back on the Alchemist.
They usually feel a little bit sad about swiping an Armorsmith, but it usually has to happen. But now he gets the card back, so he doesn't feel bad at all.
Oh, man.
So 4/4 as well.
This Ragnaros needs to do something big. And it does. It lands on RDU's Ragnaros, and that was a really important snipe.
Oh, but he has lethal now combo. That's 20.
Oh, he does. That's right. Exact damage, so it didn't even matter what
Get a
happened.
few extra cards too.
And that was a very explosive gain number 1. A Moonfire making an appearance as well. Of course, with the Gadget Stand, it does give synergy. And game number 1 goes to RDU. And that's just going to be it for now, right? The Druid deck will win, but it wasn't stay. Instead, we're going to go to Hunter versus Warlock.
Yeah. So we expected the Druid to beat Warrior. Druid, almost every build of Druid beats Warrior. Well, I'm wondering if the Moonfire and the Claw make it actually a viable pick later once we get to the stages where he can pick it into possibly a Hunter or Warlock.
So what do you think about this build? You look like you've seen it before.
I've seen it on ladder, and sometimes the gadget lines up, and then sometimes they just Moonfire face, and you're like, what are you doing with that? So.
Well, I mean, maybe they Moonfire twice with the combo in hand, and it's like,
Oh.
whoa, you didn't expect that 15th or 16th point.
So yeah, 16 with Claw, 17 with Moonfire, 18 with another Moonfire. It's pretty big.
19 with an Innervate.
Okay.
All right. So, I mean,
You're
that
never
6
safe.
card, 6 or 7 card combo. You can't really play around everything. As we get ready for game number 2 here, we go into Hunter versus Warlock. Now, you were actually mentioning to me that you think Handlock's, even though this is supposed to emulate ladder a little bit, Handlock is still a pretty strong pick overall.
Yeah, Handlock, if in this lineup, Handlock will dodge Hunter 2 out of 3 times, so it's good. But Zoo is going to be popular. Both these players play Zoo. RDU, I've seen RDU play both, and I've seen Alchemist primarily play Zoo. And the Zoo versus Hunter is pretty interesting. A lot depends on maybe getting a big Argus as the Zoo player and just stopping all damage. And then some of these Hunters are playing Explosive Trap too, which makes it really difficult for the Zoo to win.
Yeah, I've seen some people favor rotating out Snake Trap a little bit more now because people catch on to it and they realize, oh, I can race the Hunter. And they're rotating back in other traps like Explosive, especially if you know your opponent's running more aggressive decks like Zoo themselves. It might be a game winner.
Yeah, and just the fact that all the traps are being run now makes it so much harder for Zoo to play. You can't play around Explosive, Snake, and Freezing at the same time. It's just they're opposite things, and you'll just end up hurting yourself. So you see a lot of mind games too when the trap is actually placed. If it's not Mad Scientist in it, when the Hunter places the trap, you might see a little bit of mind games, or whether they bow this thing to make you think it's Freezing Trap or not, and that makes it pretty interesting in my eyes. But overall, I'd still give the edge to Hunter, for sure.
I think it's interesting. So I agree. All right, so game number 2, Warlock will be an RDU, and Alchemist will be on Hunter. And again, they have the option of picking it unless RDU 3-0 with his lineup. He is at 1-0. I want to just see more of that Druid deck. It looks really interesting.
I do too, but like I said, after this phase, I don't think he's going to pick it. I think after the first 3 games, the edge goes to Alchemist in terms of lineup.
Because he has the Warrior?
Yeah, the Druid, I don't think you can pick the Druid after the first 3 games. It's too dangerous.
That's true. Well, I mean, it depends on how RDU feels on the rest of the series, but never say never, I suppose.
Okay.
All right, so I think if we see Zoo versus the Hunter, you're feeling like Hunter has the edge
Hunter's definitely has the edge. It just has more ways to, in the Undertaker race, it'll win because it has the same cards plus Web Spinner and Mad Scientist, which the Zoo doesn't have. The Zoo has much less.
Well,
It has the egg, but...
yeah, and sometimes Hunter can even just race Zoo so much faster and burst a lot quicker compared to Zoo is dependent on that Doomguard or Soulfire, and even then they might work against each other.
Yeah, the Hunter can win with straight damage, it can win with Knife Jugger Unleash, and it can win with just board control. So many ways to win.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen too much innovation outside those traps from Hunter, and then Zoo seems to be rather timeless, right? Like I haven't seen too many changes in that deck in the recent month or so.
Just like whether people want to play 0-1 or 2 power overwhelmings, maybe a Void Terror or not, maybe 1 or 2 Owls, and then some people like Stripeco likes Arcane Golem instead of Power Overwhelm.
Right. I saw somebody on ladder the other day use Shade and X Rambus instead of a Harvest Golem. But
I haven't seen that too much.
It was really weird. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I guess not.
I don't know. I think there's room for 3 drops. I really want to see Death Lord, maybe Dancing Swords work their way in, but it seems like Harvest Golem is just too solid.
Swords.
Yeah. I think it'd be good against Hunter. Like the 4 damage, the 4 HP is pretty good. Hunter usually does 3 or 5 damage. So 4 HP could be a problem.
Right, unless they have go Animal Companion to trade into it, I guess.
It's still pretty hard.
Yeah, I guess you can't always control it. In which case it would make it a little bit more difficult. So now going into the handlock perspective, if it's handlock versus Hunter here for RDU,
then he's going to be sad.
It's going to be really tough, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't changed too much, even in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, the Hunter basically has to have a weak opening, and the handlock has to get his big guy out really quickly. Or maybe something with the Ancient Watcher, but usually not.
All right, cool. Well, I believe the game is about to begin, so let's jump into game 2 and see if Alchemixt can turn it around with his Hunter deck. And I know Alchemixt really likes playing aggressive decks. It's very rare to see a player that likes aggro and gets an opportunity to play it without it getting banned in tournaments.
Okay. Yeah, so we might actually see what's been called the Ebola Hunter, which is explosive traps, and it just tops out at Wolf Rider, Arcane Golem.
Yeah, I think so, because Alchemist generally likes being very aggressive and to the face, even though he really likes Control Warrior too. He likes the polar extremes, like super control or super aggressive, where you have a bunch of charges, like you said, Wolf Riders, you have Arcane Golems. He might even throw in like an Arcane Shot, right? The 2 damage for 1 mana cost, just to get that extra damage as much as possible and see games end on like turn 4. That's happened before in the past.
And I've noticed the Alchemix decks, even though they're those typical aggro decks, he always has a lot of tech flavor in him. Like his zoo deck has like big game hunters or maybe two
Right.
owls always, something like weird like that.
Or like a Black Knight or
Oh
something
yeah,
like
Black Knight.
that.
So we
Yeah.
could even Black Knight's pretty viable in Hunter. We might see that as well.
That'd be really interesting. Do you think Leroy makes an appearance at all? Because people have been liking it. Some people like it, some people don't.
I have seen some Leroy, but I think you would do two Arcane Golems first, and then if you still had room, you put a Leroy as well, which is very
Okay.
possible.
And then, what is this deck really weak against specifically, in your opinion?
Mm, I still I still kind of like regular Hunter versus it in the mirror. But it has its advantages with explosive trap. But if you don't get him with the explosive trap, then the regular Hunter should be better. Um, and then Zoo, I think I would still like Knife Juggler Unleash over explosive
Hmm.
trap against Zoo. But you know the way the Mad Scientist works, if you get it at the right time, explosive trap will be devastating.
So you think matching it with just the regular popular decks, Hunter and Zoo, is good against this kind of Hunter, if that's the case?
Hmm. I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see which one he brought, and that'll tell us what he thinks of the matchup as well.
All right. Well, we actually have a bit of a technical delay right now, so we have like a minute or two. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. But in the meantime, I get to ask Hyped what he thinks about Goblins versus Gnomes so far. Are you? I mean, you told me you're excited, but are you excited for a specific card at all, or?
I'm excited. I'm a little worried about the spare parts because I don't like when my opponent plays. It's so rare that your opponent plays the Asera and gets a dream card, but when that happens, it's really hard for you to play because you're like, did he get Awakens? Did he get Dream? Can I? It's really hard to play around it. So the spare parts, I'm a little worried because I don't know what my opponent's going to get, but at the same time, am I excited because one mana cards are really fun. They just let you make your turn so much like smoother. Smooth out your curve with a one mana card seems really fun.
Right. Well, I'm actually pretty excited for some of the class-specific cards. I think Paladin needed a lot of help, to say the least. Their early game was shaky, and they got a couple of interesting cards. The weapon, of course, I think it was a Cogmaster that gives a Divine Shield and Taunt. That's really interesting to me. And even the Muster for Battle, which summons the 3/1/1s and gives you a Light's Justice. So these kinds of cards, I think, really help the Paladin a lot. And I want to see just more diversity in the metagame overall. And I think that comes in improving everybody's matchups. I'm not sure what the new legendaries are though. Like I think Hunter's about to get their card released, but it should be cool. It should be cool. I think a lot of people are cautious. Like we don't want to make Hunter any better than it actually is, but
Yeah,
they
definitely.
actually do need to improve along with everyone else at an even power level.
Yeah, but just a new card pool makes certain classes more popular, which makes like Hunter maybe worse because it has bad matchups against those, and then you could start playing other classes to counter the new popular classes,
Sure,
and it just
sure.
changes the whole metagame. I love
Sure.
it.
That's right. We might not see Hunter versus Warlock too much longer, but for now we have it coming up in game number 2 between Ardu versus Alchemixt. Um, and again, these guys, it's about going into the top two. The top two for today go into week number 2, and they get points obviously as well. So you want to be able to perform well because it's a rolling stack of points. And of course, throughout the weeks, we'll be inviting. Hopefully, we'll have Hyped on in
Oh yeah, I
maybe
think
week 4 or something when
okay.
Goblins versus Gnomes comes out. I mean, I
Nice.
don't know if you want to play beforehand.
Oh no, I definitely want to play after. I love
Okay.
when new cards came out. I love
Sure.
just making a brand new deck.
Sure. Most people are too, so we're thankful that these guys are willing to cooperate with us. And of course, next week will be DreamHack as well, so
Yeah.
that'll be another really important time to see how things go before the Goblins and Gnomes comes out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's go into game number 2 and see what's happening in this Hunters vs. Warlock. I believe there was a problem with the initial mulligan screen, so I think we're going to be jumping straight into the board on turn number 1.
Okay, so yeah, the DreamHack will be the last big tournament before the Goblins and Gnomes, and we might see more exciting things like this Druid deck, just like last minute, right before the patch, new decks.
Yeah, I mean, well, quote unquote new. Although, actually, to be honest, I'm seeing RDU play. Well, I mean, even if it isn't his deck, if you said Life Coach is the one who made it or helped him make it, it's still relatively new. We've seen Gadget Stand already in previous decks, but that was like Mally Ghost decks with
Yeah.
like Moonfire and really weird stuff where like you'd save Innervate so that way you can like Innervate swipe with Mally Ghost out or something weird like
Yeah.
that. So I kind of like it. It
Yeah.
looks cool.
And Claw and Moonfire are just more justifiable now with Undertaker
Sure.
around.
Sure. Still not going to go too crazy and predict that that's like the new thing, but I want to see people continue to innovate like that. Have you seen any other interesting creations on ladder Similar to like
there's that Hunter deck. I hate it. I don't think it's interesting.
Right.
But the Druid deck, I've seen the Druid deck a ton on ladder, and I was like, well, maybe it's just because it's like a fun new deck to play. But now we're seeing it in tournament, so maybe it is like a really good deck. We'll see how already. I mean, you already beat one person with it, so we'll see how it performs throughout the rest of the tournament. And maybe someone else brought it as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool because Druid had been cutting a lot of their card draw, generally speaking. The Azure Drake falling out, and you replaced it with other cards instead, like Spectral Knight usually, and then sometimes it fizzles. But having a Gadget Stand might be able to help improve it. But then does it call for consistency issues with not drawing the Gadget Stand, and then you have a lot of cheap spells that don't replace itself, similar to Miracle Rogue?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a hand with 2 Moonfires and 2 Claws. What do you do?
Well, I guess you can kill off that Leopard Gnome and half of a Haunted Creeper.
Half of a yeah.
Possibly. Yeah. Well, overall, I'm don't know exactly what the current status of things are. I think we're still trying to get all the technical issues sorted out. Oh, but looks like we're finally got into game, and like we said, we had to skip the early mulligan. So our apologies for getting all these things up. We're waiting for spectator mode, so Goblins versus Gnomes. Hopefully, this will all be sorted out.
Okay, so there is the Explosive Trap, and there's the Leroy, like we were talking about. And like I said, if I see Leroy in Hunter deck now at 5 mana, I would expect 2 Arcane Golems as well.
All right, so and maybe a Wolf Rider thrown in there.
Oh yeah, Wolf Rider is like my least favorite card, but it seems to always be in this Hunter deck. So
it's so problematic, especially for weapons classes or any class that can't affect the board directly to deal with a Wolf Rider. That 1 point of health seems so easy to remove, but oftentimes does 6 or more damage.
yeah. Ooh. So does he owl or does he? He can't really do any mind games with the Explosive Trap because the Knife Juggler doesn't have to attack. It can just stay on the board and just shoot knives. So that wasn't an option. He couldn't like fake Snake. Oh, he could fake Snake, but that's about it, and still wouldn't be that good.
Well, that's unfortunate considering now his Undertaker dies for free, and he can even protect his Knife Juggler as well, and force the Iron Beak Owl into a trade.
But here's the bow. He's gotten the bow on safely, and he's got the Explosive Trap in hand. So we'll see if he does any mind games right here to prepare for the Explosive Trap, or he just takes out the Knife Juggler to take damage. Okay. We'll see how he sets up the Explosive next round. And we'll see if RDU can maybe prepare his board for it with an egg or something.
So even though he has Explosive Trap in the next following turn, it's just too much damage to be receiving from the Zoo player, you think?
Let's see.
Because if he played Explosive Trap and then used the Iron Beak Owl attack into the face, so to speak, it would have been harder for Zoo to able to play around that Explosive Trap.
Yeah. At the same time, sometimes he has so much damage. Maybe he just wants to start hero powering, hitting face, and just clear the board right here. Like, he wants the bow charge, obviously. So that's going to be already 10 damage from the bow hero power every turn. And then he's got 12 more damage. So he's got like 22 damage right now. If you taps, and you got it. There's the Argus.
Ooh, that is rough news for Alchemixt because now it puts it outside of range of Explosive Trap. And that was a correct guess from RDU. You know, I think this shows that he's putting in his studies as well because Alchemixt has been playing this on ladder. And, you know, by making this read, I think he's accurately predicting his opponent.
Okay, so it looks like he's probably going to kill Command the Knife Juggler here. It's pretty good because he doesn't want to bow it. He saves 4 damage on his face, and he only loses, without the beast, he only loses 0 damage. But if he had a beast, he lost only 2 damage technically. But he saved 4 HP, so it's worth it.
Okay, so he has Leroy and Arcane in hand. That's 10 damage. Plus Abusive Sergeant can weave in 12. And he can put him down to 20. So if he can make up that 8 points, maybe in the course of a couple turns he can bring him down and kill him. And that's where it becomes difficult, because if Alchemix loses the damage instead goes for the board control, I mean, that might be a lost opportunity to win the game, because maybe there's a life tap thrown in there, you hero power a couple times. I think I like the attack of face a lot.
There's the Doom Guard. No way to respond from Alchemix.
Already lost his Soulfire and his second Doom Guard. I think it'd be amusing if the 4th card was another Soulfire.
Well, that's like one of the big. Unleash is one of the biggest cards. He has. He doesn't quite have Leroy Unleashed mana next turn though. He's gonna Arcane Golem.
Well, Alchemix feels probably a lot better now that RDU lost his second Doom Guard and Soulfire. And keep in mind, he does have a big damage with Leroy and Unleash in 2 turns, if he can get that far. Game might be decided before then.
We might see Leroy into the Doom. Oh, never
Ooh,
mind.
a life tab. He needs a taunt of some kind.
Or to trade. Oh,
What's the one remaining card?
Yeah, it looks like. Ooh, he's thinking about it. He's actually doing the RDU's thinking. He's like, I might. Is there any way I can lose if I trade into it? Maybe.
See.
Yeah, he's feeling like he'll have lethal next turn no matter what.
And that's actually the right move, right? Unless does he have. Oh, he's got the damage with the hero power as well, so that's going to be it for game number 1. Or game number 2, excuse me, and the series will be tied up. So even if you win the trade, end up going down to the wire. And, well, I think Alchemixt played pretty well to his outs overall, and I think the key turn there was attacking his opponent's face instead of killing off the Defender of Argus with the bow.
Yeah. He thought about it for a bit, but he made the right decision. His hand was full of damage, and he just went for it. And now, so it's 1-1,
Okay.
right? And like we said, if it goes past the first 3 games, I think Alchemist is favored. So the next match, we're going to see the same thing. Hunter versus Warlock. We don't know which kind.
Okay. But it's going to swap. RDU is going to be playing the Hunter.
Yeah.
And then Alchemist is playing the Warlock. And I would lean towards Alchemist playing Zoo here as well, because I think that's more of his style. And not to mention that Zoo is still a very powerful deck.
Yeah. And we have to see what kind of Hunter RDU has. If it has Knife Juggler Unleash, it should be favored. If it has Explosive Trap, it should be favored. But there are some builds without either of those, with maybe Freezing Trap, that are a little weaker to Zoo.
It's a little unfortunate that RDU also lost 2 really powerful cards off of his Doom Guard and a lot of his burst. I mean, he was trying to race the Hunter very clearly, but in the end just had no opportunity to. So going to game number 3, I think if RDU doesn't win this, he'll be in big trouble because, like you said, I think the lineup advantage goes to Alchemist post lineup here.
Yeah.
And even in any case, looking at if this is Zoo, then how does RDU fight past this game here?
If it's Zoo, then that means he'll have. Well, he'll have to see what kind of Hunter. We'll have to see what kind of Hunter RDU has, and if he thinks it's favored versus the Explosive Trap Hunter. So if he has 2 Unleashes, I would play that against the Explosive Trap Hunter, and just clear it out. It depends. Maybe a Belcher. A Belcher is great against that type of Hunter. It just shuts down like the Wolf Rider, the Arcane Golem. You can't do anything. You can't get through it.
The only way you can get past is an Ironbeak Owl.
Yeah, Owl.
Because even then, Hunter's Mark still doesn't deal with the Sludge Belcher effectively if you're using chargers. So, all right. Well, looking at it, I think Alchemist might be in a good position. Although, if this Hunter takes it for RDU, he just has to win 1 more game. And this is Hearthstone, so anything could happen. Let's go to game 3 and see what these guys have prepared. Is Alchemist playing a faster Warlock, or is he playing a slower Warlock? We're about to find out.
Yeah. Like I said, I usually see him on Zoo, but it's always his own Zoo with like some interesting tech cards. Like Big Game Hunter is going to be useless if he still has that. That's what I saw him last running. Okay, so it is Zoo, and there is an Explosive Trap in the Hunter, and the Hunter does have Stranglethorn. So it probably tops out at 5.
The Stranglethorn, yeah, that was a card that he was playing back at IESF, and he says that he likes the Stranglethorn and Kodo more than Hymains. They're faster, and they generate similar amounts of pressure and damage. Maybe not the Kodo, but the Kodo can be really important to seize backboard control.
Oh yeah, Kodo's huge. So actually, let's see, RDU has Explosive and Freezing, so yeah, he probably doesn't have Wolf Rider's maybe 1 Arcane Golem or 2. I'd imagine no Hymains. And Alchemist Warlock just looks normal at this point.
Yeah, having a pretty decent curve too, but unfortunately RDU missed his turn 1, and that's pretty damaging for the Hunter, honestly. You want that turn 1 to be able to start sneaking in damage, but also to get the early board control, and that matters so much for the Hunter.
Yeah, he has 2 secrets in hand. You never want to hardcast the secrets. He does have 1 Mad Scientist, and I guess hardcasting Explosive Trap is pretty good against Zoo, if the timing's right. But we see Alchemist already has the Defender of Argus, so he might be able to push through the Explosive Trap.
Yeah, I really like shutting down the egg too as fast as possible. There's so many ways for Zoo to buff it, and we of course knew the best answer was Abusive Sergeant. And now our Alchemist just has to play a little bit slower now.
See, if he breaks the Spider here, he's for sure going to have Defender targets next turn. Actually, we see an Unleash, so he might Unleash to prevent the defender. So Voidwalker's strong.
But if you Void Walker, your follow-up is pretty weak as well. You're not using up as much mana in terms of impacting the board as best as you can.
Okay, Defender or Arcane Golem, break the spider. It's pretty safe to Unleash. Give him 3 dogs, you'll still get you'll still have the Harvest Golem alive.
Okay. Well, so thinking about Soul Firing the Mad Scientist.
Yeah.
But
the Argus and the Voidwalker are just really strong against Hunter. I think he didn't want to risk those. And so here's the bow, and if we say Ardew's hand, it's very defensive, and he hasn't even had to use those defensive cards yet. So he still has plenty of health, plenty of time to use all those cards. It's looking pretty bad for Alchemixt.
Does the Defender of Argus change anything here?
The Defender of Argus into the Doomguard is exactly what he wanted. Maybe a Lotheb even before the Doomguard would be insane from Alchemixt. That's exactly what he wants.
I'm not sure if Ardew is running any way to deal with the Doomguard efficiently, like Hunter's Mark, for example. I mean, he does have Unleashed the Hounds and Knife Juggler, but that Doomguard looks like it might go uncontested. Yeah, and he might break the Scientist here, and then there could be a Freezing Trap next turn, and he could replay the Defender in 2 turns. Well, because he's not... he's a little weak to Explosive right now. Yeah, I see what you mean. Alchemixt looking like he's having some lag, too.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness Hearthstone isn't affected by your ping.
This is one of those situations where Alchemixt might be tempted to not attack into a trap like an Explosive and just wait, but he'll be punished by this Knife Juggler Unleash.
Well, also, it depends on what trap Ardeu gets off his Hunter.
Yeah, I think if he doesn't get Explosive, he's going to play Explosive, and then later he's going to follow up with Knife Juggler Unleash. It's so strong. Oh yeah, this is really looking to favor Ardeu.
Well, unfortunately, the sequencing is a little awkward, right? The Freezing Trap will activate before, but he does get 2 bow charges if this is the case.
Like I said, his health is so high, he has plenty of time, and that Knife Juggler Unleash is just a huge comeback mechanism.
And you never know what the Doomguard ends up discarding as well over the course of a couple turns. And in the end, because Alchemixt chose to attack with Defender of Argus, the result was about the same either way. If he attacked with, I believe, the taunted Spectral Spider, then he would have gotten it back, so to speak, before he did. He would have received damage. So that Defender of Argus could have stayed on the board.
Yeah. Well, he has the option to maybe... Okay, so 6 mana Defender Argus, you don't want to pay that much, but on a Doomguard, it's pretty good.
Assuming he doesn't get Hunter's marked. But I don't know if Ardeu's had.
I don't think these decks run Hunter's Mark. Maybe just 2 Owls.
Ooh. Second Freezing Trap, though, here could be nasty. And he's got so many charges to put damage back onto the Zoo player.
Freezing Trap, you know, the best response to Freezing Trap is something like a Sun Fury and Argus and just wait and then proc at the next turn.
Well, Argus is really slow at the moment.
It only gets 1 target. I wonder if he's considering that that's a bluff secret. Or maybe he can't afford to, maybe he's thinking, if it's Freezing Trap, I lose the game anyway, so I can't afford to play around Freezing Trap at this point. I just have to go for it. Proc the Explosive, and give him, it could be Snake, he threw down the Knife Juggler, that suggests Snake usually.
That is true. We've seen a lot of Snake Traps come out and get that damage in. But I think, the way he telegraphs it is Freezing Trap, and if he gets wrong, it's like you said, the game's over. The safest play does seem to be Defender.
Yeah. No, I like this, though. He's like, if it's freezing, I lose the game, I have to go for it. Alchemist knew this going in, he had to take the risk.
And he does not look happy about that.
You feel dumb when it happens, but really he had to do it.
So from here, wow, he's thinking about conceding already. I mean, he's at 20
it's probably
health.
the right play, but
the right place to concede. I don't think you should give up, man. Second taunt might be able to help stall, but this is where Hunter can really start punishing you like mad.
Actually, I've seen a few Warlocks have been really high rated on the ladder with a single copy of Hellfire, and that's how you come back in a position like this.
Ooh, the Jungle Panther. I mean, that's just good enough to threaten out something. RDU testing to see if he can get juggles. Seems like he's making sure to be very careful with his play here.
Okay, so now that I think about it, RDU's deck, it's very similar to Alchemix's Hunter deck,
Oh.
but the freezing traps should be beneficial in the mirror. If you freezing trap an Arcane Golem, or you just have it down, they can't even cast Arcane Golem. They think it's either explosive or freezing, they just can't cast it. Wolf Rider is also going to be pretty weak as well. We haven't seen flares from either of them.
Well,
So I think RDU's Hunter is favored in the mirror, so he can choose Hunter and beat the Zoo and the Hunter of Alchemix. So Alchemix is kind of forced into playing Warrior, and RDU, it's a very high risk if you wanted to pick, if he made that read and picked Druid, because Druid could get easily punished by Zoo or Hunter. So we'll see if he ends up picking.
Well, RDU only needed one more point of damage in order to end this game, and he's got lots of it with his Leroy and kill command. But you know what? Hiding that information would be very beneficial as well.
Yeah.
So don't show the Leroy unless you have to.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't think Leroy was too popular, but we see them both running it.
All right, so this is where our format starts to get a lot more interesting, in my opinion, because from this point on, the first 3 games have played out. They saw all 3 decks from their opponents, and now they're able to pick whatever they want as many times as they can until they get to the 3 wins necessary to end this series. So from this point on, we say all bets are off, and you can play whatever you want.
Yeah, so the safe pick from Alchemist is the Warrior. It's pretty solid against Hunter and Zoo, and it's weak against Druid, but for RDU to pick the Druid would be a huge call on his part.
Right, especially if he knows his opponent has Zoo,
Yeah.
you know, and even Hunter can
Yeah.
still give a big problem to a Druid like that.
I would say Druid is definitely bad against Zoo
It's a
and Hunter.
gamble.
Yeah.
It's a gamble, and oftentimes that is also the case on ladder too, right? Where sometimes a deck can be bad, but some people try to catch it on the off cycle of things, right? Because a lot of people are playing like Priest and Warrior on ladder to try to counter the Zoos and the Hunters, and then sometimes you sneak in like the Druid there to kill both of those, and that's how ladder operates, which is sometimes cool about how this format can go.
Yeah. So I think RDU's his Hunter, the Explosive Trap, is definitely a bad card against Warrior. It doesn't kill Armor Smith, it just gives them more HP.
No, it gives them another card with Acolyte.
Yeah, it's really weak. But I
Yeah,
think
it enrages Gromosh sometimes in the game too. Explosive Trap's terrible against Warrior.
yeah. So Hunter, weak against Warrior, which he expects Alchemist to pick, but strong against his other 2. Druid, good against Warrior. And the Zoo... So the Zoo is actually decent. Okay.
So, sorry guys, I thought we were gonna be off camera for a while. I was getting really. These chairs are really
They're pretty
comfortable.
comfortable.
They're really comfortable, although they make me feel very incapable as a man because of how big it is and how small I am. Going into game number 4, Hunter versus Warlock, a rematch. Has anything changed at all, Mulligans, now that you see the traps a little bit more for Hunter? Is there anything different at all?
Maybe just setting up for a board that can live through Explosive Trap. Maybe you'll see a few turns earlier the response, instead of just like, oh, I see a trap, Argus. Maybe we'll see a few turns different. Like the egg is a way to deal with it.
But he threw away the egg and opted to go for a quicker start. And oh man, Alchemixt gets a pretty poor starting hand, almost as poor as it gets. And RDU didn't have exactly the most stunning opening hand either, but that Undertaker is at least something. Oh man, it's even more bad news for Alchemixt here.
Oh man. Yeah, he could do the naked Direwolf. He could Soulfire and just risk pitching the coin, but he's still floating a mana, so it's not that good.
Well,
Yeah.
I think every other scenario here is not desirable at all. I think you want to Soulfire this.
Okay, that's probably the... I wouldn't be surprised to see coin Direwolf, but...
What are the cons of putting that out here? Is it because you're losing the coin, or because the alpha is pretty weak, or what?
Yeah, it's weak, and then... So, RDU played the Undertaker, so you could assume a 2-drop, but he actually top decks that. Oh my...
I don't think he really cares, right? If he can... Like, if the Soulfire discards a Doomguard, it's just going to play the other Doomguard.
Yeah.
So, because most likely the high chance is that Doomguard is going to pitch it anyway.
Wait. We might see the coin Doomguard into Doomguard. It's really strong.
We might, but he needs to draw enough cards for it to
Yeah.
to be
He
worth
needs to not
it.
play anything.
Yeah.
Harvestcone's pretty good though.
He needs to not. His next card needs to be something that gets ditched, and then his Soulfire goes along with it. And if he gets Coin Doomguard into Doomguard, that'd be pretty nasty. I like it. You know, as much as you want to get the charges off the bow, board control matters so much to the Zoo player that they can't stack their advantage.
Yeah, and this way RDU's Freezing Trap is more valuable. Their Freezing Trap is going to get off this Mad Scientist most likely. Okay.
All right, you think it's time to do this?
I think it's, and he can coin, maybe he can do coin, Soulfire, and then just play the Doomguard that lives. And there's a potential that both live. Or no, yeah, coin, Soulfire. But he doesn't really want to Soulfire the Mad Scientist because it could be a Freezing Trap.
Right. That'd be actually a disaster if that was the case.
Yeah. I think it's either coin, Doomguard, go face, or Voidwalker tap.
Well, but he's at 26 health. It's still far away from killing him, so it feels like Coin Doomguard is so risky.
Yeah. Plus, he's seeing that RDU can crash the Scientist into the Doomguard and potentially get a Freezing Trap, and then Alchemixt might do the same thing. He's like, well, if it's freezing, I lose, so I have to go for it and just go face again.
So he goes for the tap instead.
Okay, Egg is good.
Especially after that his opponent's already played his Ironbeak Owl.
Yeah.
Egg is more likely to pop.
Argus targets are really important against Hunter, and the Egg almost guarantees you one always, whether it be the 1/3 Egg or the 5/5 Nerubian.
So then this play means that he's most likely to be playing one Doomguard.
Yeah, just Soulfire Doomguard.
So he's going to Soulfire Doomguard, which is always something that I say. If I pick up both Doomguards, then the next best card you can draw is Soulfire, actually.
Yeah.
So you can play 2 of those 3 cards. Well, that's a pretty nifty draw. Getting another bow so you can control the board. And this is some significant damage being pushed out every single turn. 6 damage per turn.
Yeah, usually the Hunter has to come back from the board with the Unleash, but he's just had the board the whole time. Now, okay, so now he might be able to deal with the Freezing Trap. Oh, he's going Doomguard first, so he really values the second Doomguard.
They keep the Soulfire, so I guess
so it's the same thing.
Same thing. Net result.
So now he needs like something to proc the Freezing Trap on the Egg, so maybe like an Abusive, so he can kind of throw the Egg in and get the extra Doomguard hit, or just the Argus is fine. Alright, so he knows he's going to crash the Scientist in, so he just takes out the Owl.
Okay, and back over to RDU.
So he does run Savannah.
Savannah Highmane.
Probably just one if he has the Tiger.
He might have taken out his Kodo as well.
Okay.
I mean, he likes mixing and rotating it out here and there. Alright, he does get the Abusive Sergeant, and that is a way to activate the Egg. But does he want to?
Yeah. He's extremely low.
Yeah, and Hunter could kill him next turn, too. He's at 12 health, and if he kills off this Savannah Highmane, it still leaves 4 damage on the board. So he needs to kill off the Mad Scientist as well.
So, with the Leper Gnome, with the Doomguard hit, he could top deck lethal. Not anymore. He doesn't want to proc. He doesn't want to give him the trap. He just can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of power on board. Hopefully he can force him into a trap, but I think this is enough damage because there's Unleash the Hounds and Kill command, and that should mean RDU is going to take this series 3-1. That's pretty devastating because Alchemixt, he qualified from the preseason, but RDU does go to the semifinals and play for a spot to potentially get invited next week. And keep in mind, top 3 seeds from this tournament, or top 3 spots, do get points that contribute towards the standings overall. So it's important to get this first one under your belt.
Yeah. And like we said, we didn't like the Druid so much in the lineup, but it did its job. It killed Warrior. Yeah. And then once we got to the free pick stage, RDU's decks, his Hunter and Zoo were a little bit better against Alchemix's Hunter and Zoo with the Freezing Trap and the Explosive, which is not a combo I usually like, but in this situation it's perfect.
Yeah, and I liked that overall there were some really tough decisions, but I think Alchemix played to his percentages. And unfortunately, it didn't fall for him this time around, but I'm sure he'll be back. I mean, Alchemix is a guy who's qualified for his fair share of stuff, too.
Super hard decisions from Alchemix we saw there where even there's this like no winning decision, but he made the best plays. So
Sure, sure. So RDU advances in his bracket, and I believe he's going to be looking at Hostie's match next. That's why I'm getting information from the admins here. And keep in mind, guys, that we're having the players play as live as possible. And again, there are a couple issues, but we're sorting them out. And bear with us as we get through all of these processes together. And also that brings us to our next topic here of who Hosty is. Now, people don't really know too much about him, but he comes in through as an invite because we actually invited Firebat as a BlizzCon champion here for week number 1, but he said he was preparing for DreamHack, so he says, why not give it to my teammate Hosty, who's also a guy that qualified via NESL preseason anyways. So
yeah, Hosty was like either maybe I think just number 1.
It was
he
number
switched
one.
with Luffy a little bit, but yeah, he's number 1 from what I can remember on the points overall, which means he just constantly won the Wednesday and the Sunday Cups more than anyone else.
Yeah. So he was supposed to be a qualified player, but because his teammate and his qualified spot just slid into the invite, we ended up tagging another person, which I believe was Chalky. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have more here from the ESL Legendary Series. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be back right after this.